heartbreaking.
We're not anything to be afraid of. We're just like you. We have families. We want to raise our young ones to a better life.
It makes me feel like an outcast, but now that I see everybody here, I feel appreciated and not so out. Like, I feel in. Like, I'm a part of this world.
Oh, thousands chanted Stop Asian Hate in Atlanta and in cities across the country yesterday, rallying in support of the Asian American community in pain after the deadly massacre last week that left 8 people dead, 6 of them women of Asian descent. Georgia Senators John Ossoff and Raphael Warnock joined in solidarity yesterday and called for gun reform after meeting with President Biden and Vice President Harris on Friday. Joining me now to discuss Atlanta Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms and Congresswoman Marilyn Strickland from Washington State. Thank you both very much for coming to the Sunday show. Mayor Bottoms, let me start with you. Tell us, how is your community doing? How is Atlanta doing in the wake of the shootings?
Well, thank you for having me, Jonathan. We are healing. This has been a very tough week in the metro Atlanta area. The visit from the president and the vice president this week went a very long way to make sure that the AAPI community knows that they are heard and their pain is felt by all of us. State Senator Michelle Au said it best, that this is a population that often feels unheard, overlooked, and unseen. And over the past week, what we have experienced in our city and as a nation is this recognition that there are real problems, real hatred, and it's something that all of us have to address together.
Mayor, let me get your... I want to show this clip of Cherokee County Sheriff's Office Captain Jay Baker. It's famous. We all know what this clip is, but I want to play it and then ask you a question on the other side.
He was pretty much fed up and kind of at the end of his rope, and yesterday was a really bad day for him, and this is what he did.
All right, Mayor Bottoms, I need to ask you this question because I'm glad we had that angle, because when he said that the shooter had a really bad day, I noticed your eyes go like this. What was your reaction to hearing that kind of explanation and rationale for a mass shooter?
Well, Jonathan, I want to put it in context. Cherokee County had 1 murder last year, and to go from 1 murder to a mass shooting, obviously, this is not a team that's used to speaking about the sensitivities surrounding homicides. That being said, I had the benefit of being in the back with the officers before we went out. There was real sympathy toward the victims that was expressed. Clearly, his language could have been more sensitive. My impression was that he was relaying what the shooter told him, but then the sensitivity of the moment of relaying that to the public, obviously, it was very hurtful to a number of people. And it's my hope that not just this officer, but law enforcement across the country will take this into consideration when speaking publicly about something that's sensitive as a murder.
Congresswoman Strickland, let me bring you into the conversation. You come from a district in Washington State, clear on the other side of the country, and yet what happened in Atlanta has reverberated through you and your community. Talk about that.
Well, first of all, I have roots in Atlanta. I have cousins who live there. I attended Clark Atlanta University and lived there for 5 years. And, you know, over the past few years, I've just watched this community grow into this beautiful multicultural community. And for me to, you know, to hear about the shooting on Tuesday night, I had to say something on the floor of the House when we were actually discussing the Violence Against Women Act. And so I talked about the fact that when something is racist, we need to call it out. We need to stop making excuses for it.
Congresswoman, let me stop you there because we actually have tape of a part of your speech. Let's have a listen and then we'll come back.
Racially motivated violence must be called out for exactly what it is, and we must stop making excuses or rebranding it as economic anxiety or sexual addiction, and how the default position when violence is committed against people of color or women is to defer from confronting the hate that is often the motivation.
And Congresswoman, what you also say in that speech is that You talked about your identity. You are Black, and you're also Korean.
I am. That's true. And so for me to witness this spate of violence that's been happening, really what started in 2020 when people were talking about these hate crimes against the Asian American Pacific Islander community, and then to see it culminate in what happened on Tuesday night in Atlanta, it was heartbreaking. But it also, I believe, is an awakening, because I think for so long, a lot of people have believed that the Asian American Pacific Islander community would be quiet, that we would suffer in silence, and that, something like this happens and we're not going to acknowledge the root causes of it. And as you said, editorial that you wrote in the Washington Post yesterday, we need allies to stand with us, because this bigotry and this racism is something that is not new to America, but it's something that is still happening today.
And I'm going to talk about that in my byline at the end of the show. We're closing in on less than 2 minutes left, but I want to have each of you talk about the role language has played in the atmosphere that's led to anti-Asian American violence. How much of a role did the rhetoric coming out of the White House from the previous administration surrounding the pandemic, how much of a role has that played in the ugly atmosphere that Asian Americans are living with now? Mayor Bottoms.
It's had everything to do with the uptick that we are experiencing. What we know is that the AAPI community has, for a very long time, been subjected to hatred and discrimination. But having it come from the President of the United States and giving it permission, it's taken on a different level. And it is reflective of how damaging his presidency was to our country. 8 people lost their lives, one still fighting for his life this morning. And it's unfortunate that even on the other side of this, that there are leaders across this country still refusing to recognize and denounce what's happened, not just in Atlanta, but the damage that was done by Donald Trump.
And Congresswoman Strickland.
I agree. It's no coincidence that hate crimes against the AAPI community spiked starting in 2020 and still happening today, during the time when the former president was calling it the Kung flu and using these very racist terms to describe this. And so we can't deny that Donald Trump had an impact on giving people permission to be openly bigoted and openly racist. People feel too comfortable doing it. And tragically, we're seeing people get hurt. We're seeing violence. And on Tuesday night, we saw death.
People are feeling too comfortable to do it, but also people are feeling very comfortable to respond with heart and with their feet and with action to push against hate like this. Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms, Congresswoman Marilyn Strickland, thank you both very much for coming to the Sunday Show.